the 1930s cartoon that kills animators. In the golden age of animation, there were legends, Walt, Fleischer, and the countless small, forgotten studios that burned bright and vanished. None more forgotten than Fleish Sons and their endlessly grinning mascot, Fiddles. The official story is simple: bankruptcy, a quick close, but those who knew the draftsmen, the artists, whispered a different truth. They claimed the studio didn't close, it simply ceased to be. Overnight, the first sign, always, was the Inkwell. It was supposed to hold the blackest pigment, but soon, the ink began to leak a contaminant, a sickly green bile, hot and thick, that defied the laws of chemistry. They initially dismissed it, a bad batch, perhaps a smudge on the glass, but the animators, overworked and half-blind in the flickering lamplight, couldn't ignore the way their simple, clean lines began to move. The drawings weren't just animated, they were aware. You could see it briefly, in the glossy, soulless eye of every character. A flash of unnatural, sickening green, reflecting back the terror of the man who created them. The ooze was no longer contained. It spilled across the wooden desks, warping the old sketches, turning innocent outlines into grotesque, curling forms. The paper was losing its power to hold the nightmare in place. Panic set in. One draftsman, attempting to scrape the ink from his drawing, found his own arm stretching, not breaking, but bending like cheap rubber, echoing the impossible fluid geometry of his own cartoon characters. The contagion had begun its final work. The wooden desks, the tools, the foundations of the studio itself, all dissolved, not into dust, but into a flowing, cartoonish goo. The physical world was being edited. The transformation was horrific and immediate. Their faces became elastic, their features stretching into impossible, panicked rubber band shapes. The studio was no longer a room. Walls curved without cornerstones, floors rippled like waves of thick ink, and the ceiling spiraled into an impossible peak. They were trapped inside a nightmare drawn by a drunken hand. Fiddles was no longer a drawing. He was an entity, a massive, impossibly long shadow that stalked the studio. The animators fled their own creation, trying to escape a presence given life by the cursed green ink. There was no escape. The doorway, their final exit, was blocked by a bubbling, waist-high barrier of pure, writhing green ooze. It pressed against them, stretching their bodies out of shape, claiming them. The floor disappeared. The entire studio became a rising pool of that boiling, viscous fluid. The creators were drowning in their own malignant creation, and there was the grin. The ooze itself formed Fiddles' smile, grotesque, wide, impossibly toothy. The final image many of them saw, half submerged in the fluid, was the face of their grinning executioner. The end was not quick. It was a slow, agonizing descent. Hands stretched and distorted like melting rubber. When the chaos subsided, the studio was silent. The floor was no longer wood, but a vast, frozen lake of shimmering, sickly green sludge and ink, preserving every distorted shape the nightmare had created. On one wall, the ink had not fully solidified. It had formed a swirling black whirlpool, a constant, subtle reminder that the barrier between dimensions had been permanently compromised. The only discernible object left was a single, tiny fedora hat. It floated motionless on the surface of the green goo, the silent, pathetic sign of a life reduced to a simple cartoon outline. Crumpled, Ink-soaked paper carried the final, frantic testimony of the victims. A last warning scrawled right next to a single, staring, pie-cut eye. The signature mark of the demon that possessed the animation. And sometimes, faintly, on the surface of the curving walls, you could see him. The ghostly outline of Fiddles, permanently etched into the plaster. The most damning evidence was the film. A single, surviving reel, warped and corrupted. The celluloid was physically distorted into impossible rubber hose shapes. A terrifying, wide-grinning Fiddles, impossibly defined. His eyes and mouth weeping thick, toxic green ooze. The last thing ever recorded by the studio. The truth is inescapable. The animators didn't die. They were forced into an eternal service. Trapped inside the animation itself, their existence reduced to faint, ghostly rubber hose characters. What the cycle begs the final question. Did the ooze possess the ink, or did the animators, in their twisted obsession to bring Fiddles to life, simply draw a demon? Was it chemical, or was it pure creative malice? We may never know, because the remnants of the studio, the distorted lines, the impossible shapes, prove one thing. Fiddles is not a memory. He is a dark echo, a grinning, parasitic force that exists in the void between the drawing and the drawn. All that remains of their desperate battle is silence. A single pencil, stretched and rubberized, a drop of the toxic ink hanging from its tip. The tool of creation became the instrument of their annihilation. And we have to consider, if the ink could escape the paper and corrupt reality, what does that mean for the media we consume today? What if the film reel was touched by the ooze? What if we are looking through the contaminated lens right now? This tale of Fleish Sons, of the Fiddles that wouldn't stay put, is filed away in an uncatalogued box somewhere, a warning that was sealed, labeled, and ignored. Because the greatest terror is not the monster on the screen, but the feeling that, for a brief moment, the monster in the frame recognized you. That concludes this reel, for now. Thank you for watching Hidden Logic. Don't forget to subscribe for more uncatalogued footage.